to Chuck Schumer's credit, he came out in favor of legalizing marijuana. So this is an instance where people who are unapologetically on the left and are taking no bullshit, they've pushed guys like Chuck Schumer to that position. Now it's like 64% of the country that wants to legalize marijuana. So this is great. And by the way, this is one of the few issues where Chuck Schumer will budge. On a lot of issues, he won't budge. Why? Corporate donors. So he won't budge on Wall Street issues. He probably won't budge on war issues because, he gets money from the military-industrial complex. So he was for Trump's bombing of the Syrian government, for example. But listen, either way, take a win where you can get it. This is definitely a win. Chuck Schumer, one of the leaders of the Democrats, saying, yeah, let's have legal marijuana across the country. Definitely a positive thing, and definitely give him credit on this. But we're at a point now where the debate is becoming so heavily one-sided that it's overwhelming. And this happened with gay marriage at one point, too. There was a time when gay marriage was unpopular. Then at a certain point, everybody was like, really? Why the fuck don't we have this already? And public opinion just swung massively in favor of gay rights. Well, take a look at this. Fox News hosts are now debating the issue.
Well, yeah, you don't want
people, back to work, right?
Operating heavy machinery when they're testing positive for things. Listen, I'm a total hypocrite on it. I think a lot of parents are. You smoke when you're young, and then when you get older and you have kids, you don't want your kids smoking.
Right.
It's as simple as that. I do think this is the direction this country's heading in, though.
Yeah.
I like the idea of the taboo around weed because I think maybe it might repel people that are on the fence about it.
Right.
With that said, I do agree with something Schumer said, Crying Chuck, for those of you who don't know his nickname, that if you're black in this country and maybe you're, walking around with like a dime bag and you get popped, they might actually book you for that. Or
Right.
if you're like some preppy white kid in the suburbs and you get caught with the gram, they're going to probably say, all right, run along.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a double standard there, and I understand people are upset about it, but at the same time, pot's not really that good for you in a broader sense of the word.
And Jesse brings up a good point, Kimberly. I mean, parenting, as you know, is hard enough as it is. So what do you think about normalizing pot? It makes people lazy. It does.
Greg's face.
There's so much misinformation going on at this table. I apologize to anybody who's ever read up on this drug for this ignorance. Go ahead.
Oh, Greg. When you have kids, you might feel differently about
You
pot.
can't use that. You cannot use that excuse.
Just did.
Number one.
Okay, I asked Kimberly about kids.
All right, go
first,
ahead.
and then
Wait till I understand.
I'll come to childless Greg after.
Ooh,
I'm
it's
kidding.
just you are bizarre.
I'm kidding.
All right, go ahead.
Somebody needs to have maybe some medicinal marijuana at the table. So here's the problem. You don't want to glamorize it. You don't want children to try to start to take it to then gateway to other drugs. However, it has an important role in society in terms of its medicinal qualities and properties. Very good to so many people that I know that have had cancer or died. It brought a lot of comfort to those who were suffering or towards the end of their life. We talked about the other day, even veterinarians are now supplying it, dispensing it for animals as well. So that being the case, you want to make sure that you are looking at it, at all the studies, and making sure that you're actually fully and thoroughly not dismissing something, stigmatizing it. However, on the other side, having been a prosecutor, I would like to think, Jesse, that, they're treating people the same, but sometimes I guess there's certain instances, but as a whole, I think law enforcement, they don't have an interest in just, going and tormenting and picking on people and discriminating.
No, I'm not knocking law enforcement, because if you're doing it by the book, that's how it's got to be.
Right, so it's got to be okay,
Right.
but there's people that have been in federal prisons for small amounts, so we have to have some more uniformity and conformity in the law so that there isn't, unequal treatment.
Okay, Greg, you defend it.
I actually don't have to defend it. All you have to do is look at the facts and look at history. You might want to read up on Prohibition and how that worked out for the country when alcohol was illegal. Once alcohol was illegal, the deaths declined. Alcohol has killed far more people in a day than marijuana has killed in the history of the drug. You're right. It is true. That is a fact. Just because you don't like something doesn't mean that it should be illegal. In terms of employment, yes, you don't want people high working machinery, but you don't want them drunk either. So you have rules for that. Just because you don't like something or you think it's going to be dangerous to your kids, isn't the reason why you
don't
have a
believe
law.
It's a gateway drug.
No, there's no evidence that it's a gateway drug. And actually,
I'll tell you that. I'll just say.
no,
that,
let me finish.
yeah,
Let me finish. Because the other thing too is the idea that you want to make it a taboo. A taboo, making something taboo has never worked among young people. The more you make something dangerous, the more appealing it is. In fact, the opposite strategy is to make something mundane and as boring as possible so that no one looks at it as edgy. But there's plenty of research out there to take a look at it. I would ask that you read that instead of approaching a topic emotionally.
I'm not approaching it emotionally. I've spoken to drug rehabilitation counselors and drug and law officers who have told me and my husband, do not legalize it. It's a gateway drug. It will make it harder for us to do our job.
That's not a study, but okay. That's not a statistic either. That's anecdotal.
Well, let's light it up after.
It is, I mean, I would have told you it's a cold day in hell if you ever get Fox News hosts to openly argue about this issue on air and have it like 50-50. But that's where we are. And, you know, like I said, it happened with gay rights. Country was against it. Then at some point, everybody's just like, what the fuck are we doing? No, yeah, well, let's all be for this. And now well over 60% are for gay rights. Well over 60% are for legalizing marijuana. And listen, at the end of the day, we just need to get the money out of politics, because if we do that, then we would have legal marijuana instantly. I mean, the only thing that's holding it back at the federal level is lobbying. I mean, that's the reality. So you have alcohol companies that are against legalizing marijuana. Why? They view it as their competition. So they lobby politicians to not legalize it. And you have entrenched interests like the DEA, for example. There are a lot of jobs in the DEA tied to marijuana being illegal. So they're going to fight this. They don't want it to become legal. The tobacco industry, same thing. Pharma, in some respects, says, no, we don't want to have legal marijuana. You know, I would say, I don't know why they don't get ahead of all this and try to, you know, sell it themselves. But they're not. They're fighting against it. Probably because so many pills would be donezo if you legalize medical marijuana or recreational marijuana. You know, you don't have the need for as many opiates, for example, but even perhaps SSRIs in some cases. So there are industries that are tied to jobs and billions of dollars that are fighting the normalization and legalization of marijuana for nefarious motives, basically, for the profit motive. So ruin people's lives, who gives a shit? Take away freedom, who gives a shit? Because we want to keep making our money. That's what's happening. So you get the money out of the political system, we could get legal weed, and everybody's happy. But I like some of the points that Greg Gutfeld made there. Man, he was passionate about this issue. So he made the point about alcohol. Great point. That's a point I make all the time. Prohibition. Prohibition actually made it more dangerous, because you had bad batches of alcohol, so people would drink and die because there's no regulation, because it's illegal and it's underground on the black market. It made the mafia incredibly powerful and increased crime drastically. The same thing happens with marijuana and the drug cartels. The drug cartels are strong because marijuana is illegal. As soon as they legalized marijuana in Colorado and then now in California, the drug cartels took a giant hit as a result of that. So learn from that and legalize it at the federal level. And then he makes a point that I never thought of, but it's a really great point. He said, you don't want to have it, if you have it illegal, you put a taboo on it, and that makes kids want to try it because they want to rebel. But if you have it legal, well, then you can make it mundane and boring, and then the kids won't try it. And my understanding is that there actually is evidence to back that up already in Colorado, that theory. So that's fascinating, because I don't know if people would have guessed that that's the case. In fact, I would guess that they would think the opposite would happen. But it happened the way Greg kind of explained it there, so that's fascinating. And then the final point is, they don't have a counter argument, so they just smear. They go, weed makes you lazy. What? I mean, maybe some people who smoke weed, for me, it makes me paranoid, so I don't like it personally. But there are plenty of people, like Joe Rogan smokes weed, and Joe Rogan's one of the most productive motherfuckers on the planet. So that's just a fucking stereotype that they're regurgitating, and it's so dumb. And then final point is the childless Greg. Like, oh, childless Greg over here. So what, you just smear him because he doesn't fucking succumb to societal norms, so therefore, you know, that's some sort of an argument against his position? It's not an argument. It's a smear. And it's an ignorant one at that, because it presupposes that, like, well, obviously, you know, like something's wrong with you or your beliefs on marijuana because you don't have kids. That's not a trump card, no pun intended. Like, I have kids, therefore, don't listen to anything the non-kid having people say. What the fuck is that? It's a hacky point is what it is.